We're doing System Concepts, Article 22, Classes of the Soul. As we advance on the spiritual path, it is important for us to understand which class of the soul we belong to. It will help us identify our pinpoint that needs to be scrutinized, accepted, and corrected in potential in order to cross the spiritual barrier. The pain point is the single cause that is keeping us in concealment below the spiritual barrier. It represents an issue that keeps us away from using our full potential. We correct the pain point in potential before the barrier, and in actuality after the barrier. We deal with experiences that flare up our pain point all the way until the end of our personal correction. The experiences themselves are irrelevant to our pain point. Two people can experience the same situation and have different responses to them. Working with our pain point allows us to focus our work on what requires correction. Then we will not waste time on concepts that have nothing to do with our spiritual progress. Sometimes it becomes difficult to identify our soul class. It is recommended to scrutinize with a group of Phase 3. What soul class mostly identifies our relationship in the group? Remember to experiment with the classes. Discerning our soul class might take time. Put this concept to the side and deal with it on another occasion if it is too confusing. The soul class is recommended to be identified when we are in the group phase, Phase 3. This is when the pain point is revealed emotionally to us, darkness, in group phase. And here's a quote. 54. All those friends who do not love each other depart the world before their time. All the friends in Rashbi's time had love of soul and love of spirit among them. This is why in his generation the secrets of the Torah were revealed. Rabbi Shimon would say, all the friends who do not love each other cause themselves to stray from the right path. Moreover, they put a blemish in the Torah, since there is love, brotherhood, and truth in the Torah. Avram loved Isaac. Isaac loved Avram, and they were embraced. And they both gripped Jacob with love and brotherhood and were giving the spirits in one another. The friends should be like them and not blemish them, for if love is lacking in them, they will blemish their value above, that is, Avram, Yitzchak, and Jacob, which are Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet. From Kitisa, when you take, from the Zohar. The core qualities we are dealing with in relation to the soul classes are kindness and judgment. Each core quality includes a wide scale of expressions. Kindness scales from being extremely selfish and self-centered to being naturally kind and supportive. Judgment scales from being extremely overcritical and aggressive to acceptance, responsibility, and guidance. There are 4 classes. Number 1, Avram is chesed, kindness. Number 2, Yitzchak is Gevurah, judgment. Number 3, Yaakov is Tiferet, beauty. Number 4, Yosef is Yesod, foundation. Netzach and Hod are included in Yosef since they are considered expressions of Yosef. The fathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are the cause, while the sons, Moshe, Aaron, and Yosef, are the consequence. David, Malchut, is the discernment that anyone can attain in this generation and is not a soul class. Here's a quote. And they said, Shabbat 67, Bava Metzia 113, all of Israel are sons of kings. Also, Jerusalem Talmud, Masechet Horiot, Instructions 3:5, a king that dies, all of Israel are worthy of kingship. This is a great secret, for in all previous generations, which were but a preparation for Malchut, kingship, special kilim, vessels, were required for anointment of their judges, such as the souls of Moses and Samuel. But the final purpose depends on the whole of Israel, since when a tiny part of a tiny spark is missing, the end will not be able to appear. Hence all of Israel are worthy of kingship, since everyone is equal in this true discernment. For this reason there is no special kli, vessel, for drawing that perfection, but anyone who cleanses and purifies his soul to be worthy of extending the revelation of Malchut in the world will literally be called King David. This is the meaning of David, king of Israel, is indeed alive, for he has not died at all. His kli is within each and every soul of Israel, from Israel. This is not the case with the soul of Moses, which is found only in the wise disciples in the generation, as well as in the prophets and priests. From the article 600,000 Souls by Bala Sulam. Each soul class represents a different mix of internal and external qualities of kindness and judgment that we are physically born with. Avram and Yaakov are internally kind, while Yitzchak and Yosef are internally judgmental. Avram and Yitzchak are externally kind, while Yaakov and Yosef are externally judgmental. Here is a quote. There is the discernment of right and there is left. On the right, there is Chochmah, Chesed, Netzach. And on the left, there is Bina, Gevur, and Hod. Right is considered private providence, and left is considered reward and punishment. When engaging in the right, we should say that all is in private providence, and then one naturally does nothing. Thus, one has no sins. However, the mitzvot that one performs are also not one's own, but are a gift from above, so one should be thankful for them, as well as the corporeal benefits that he has done to him. And this is called netzach, when one nitzach defeated the sitra achra, and from this extends chesed, mercy, which is love, and thus he comes to chokhmah, called risha de lo et yada, the unknown head. Afterwards, one should go to the left line, considered hod. From the article 216, right and left, from the book Shemati by Bala Sulam. These are base classes that get layered with corrections from humanity, phase 1, and the spiritual society, phase 2, externally. Corrections from the group, phase 3, and individual, phase 4, are layered internally. The base class of each person is fixed for their entire lives. Embrace the differences of the classes and use them to identify people. Then we learn how we relate to ourselves and others in the various phases. The classes are not meant to limit us, but rather reveal to us our structure, so we can streamline our work with ourselves and others. Note that the classes are not male or female and apply indiscriminately to race, tribe, region, or religion. The classes are built on basic personalities that give a person a perspective that all other qualities shine through. Here's a quote. Number 76. There is fire, water, and air. Chagat, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet. The 3 first days of creation. Although they are the initial supernal foundations of all that will follow, their actions are not revealed until the earth, meaning Malchut, reveals them. Only then does the work of each of the supernal foundations reveal itself. Hence the power of the first 3 days is revealed only on the 4th. From the donkey driver, the Zohar. Each class represents one of the 4 elements. Avram is water, Yitzchak is fire, Yaakov is wind, and Yosef is earth. Each class has an advantage and a pain point. Avram has the stability of water. They deal with the pain point of a supporting environment. In their uncorrected state, they attract unsupportive situations that make them feel unworthy to advance. Here's a quote. The portion Go Forth begins with Avram being commanded to go to the land of Canaan. When Avram reaches the land of Canaan, hunger forces him to go down to Egypt, where Pharaoh's servants take Sarai, his wife. In Pharaoh's house, Abram presents her as his sister. Fearing for his life, the Creator punishes Pharaoh with infections and diseases, and he is forced to give Sarai back to Avram. From the portion Lech Lecha, from the book Disclosing a Portion by Rav Michael Leibman. The correction for Avram is to be independent of the environment and their perception, while still interacting with them physically. Yitzchak has the innovation of fire. They deal with the pain point of their self-expression. In their uncorrected state, they attract mentors, managers, and teachers to make decisions for them. Here's a quote. Later in the portion, Isaac digs 2 wells, both of which are taken by the Philistines. A 3rd well remains in Jacob's hands, and he calls it Rehovot. Finally, Avimelech and Isaac make a covenant between them. From the portion Toldot, from the book Disclosing a Portion by Rav Michael Leibman. The correction of Yitzchak is to start making their own decisions and free themselves from their shackles that they placed on themselves. Yaakov is the beauty of wind. They deal with the pain point of responsibility over their possessions and relationships. In their uncorrected state, they take responsibility over other people that they are not meant to. Here's a quote. Jacob comes to a well near Haran, where he meets Rachel and her father, Laban the Aramean. He offers to work for Laban for 7 years in return for permission to marry Rachel. At the end of the 7 years, Laban deceives Jacob and gives him her sister, Leah, instead. He compels Jacob to work for him for 7 more years, after which he gives him Rachel. Jacob marries her. From the portion Vayetze, from the book Disclosing a Portion by Rav Michael Lyman. The correction of Yaakov is to work on letting go of that tension of responsibility in order to grow independent of the success or failure of others. Yosef. Yosef has the strength of earth. They deal with the pain point of their own validation. In their uncorrected state, they feel internally empty and constantly covered up with different experiences. They attract people that tell them of their emptiness and non-existence. Here's a quote. Joseph is Yesod, a quality that includes all our good qualities, the qualities of bestowal. It is a collection of all the qualities of bestowal, and because it has nothing of its own, but the collection of prior qualities, it can connect with the quality of reception. This quality can connect within it all the qualities of bestowal at its upper part, and all the qualities of reception at its lower part. It is Joseph, because it collects all the qualities within it. Joseph is also called the foundation of the world, since the world truly appears in this quality, a collection of two forces, bestowal and reception, where the creator and the creature meet. In the portion Vayeshev, from the book Disclosing a Portion by Rav Michael Lyman. The correction of Yosef is to come to the acceptance that they are empty, that they have no quality. Then they can fill themselves with all the qualities instead of needing validation of their current empty state. The classes, phases, and degrees may cause us to feel labeled and limited. However, on the contrary, the problem is that we lack details, definitions, names, and appellations to live our lives better. The goal of the classes and their pinpoints is to shorten the work for us to gain control over our lives. They are to allow us to accept how we were created. Then we can empower ourselves with our strengths and work with others to help and support us with our weaknesses. The guidance is to focus each person on the right discernments to advance as fast as possible. We are not going from darkness to light, rather from an abstract light to a detailed darkness. We start our path confused, naive, and innocent. We need a system to help us grow to the point where we can have our own control over ourselves. Here's a quote. There is a discernment of the Messiah, son of Joseph, and the Messiah, son of David, and both must unite, and then there will be true wholeness in them. From the article 183, The Discernment of the Messiah, from the book Shemati by Bala Sulam. The reward of all classes working with each other despite the differences is a powerful and stable unification of all the qualities that will allow us to be unstoppable at any endeavor. And here's the first workshop question. What is the pain point? Cedric.
Well, I believe that perhaps it's in terms of speaking about the ego, it's what specific thing about my ego bothers me the most, or is the most harmful thing for me. But to be honest, I don't really know what the pain point could be.
Gabriel.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Those main qualities or things that hold you back from realizing your full potential. You know, to actually to reach that state of of attaining. So and it's pretty much what it comes down to every single time. What's the real? Why do I not want to become the creator? Why do I not want to achieve this?
Laura.
It's the point that needs rectifying, clarifying in order to become whole. It's the point that's stopping you from uniting completely with yourself, with the creator.
Maria.
Yes, and therefore it actually is the potential of internal power. It's right there, but it is presented in a way that needs that refinement. So you have situations, we can all be looking at the same situation, like you said in the reading, but if it triggered a pain point to me, it's specifically there that it's the opportunity for me to use it towards the goal.
Michael.
The pain point, it's what is holding me back from reaching spirituality. It's the things that presents in my life, and the situations that occur that holds me back.
Rick.
Pain point keeps us concealed. It's an obstacle in front of us, inside of us, that blocks our ability to gain internal power. We must seek within that internal area, scrutinize it and find out what it is that we're using to stop ourselves, what it is that we're using to misdirect ourselves from what we're seeking, which is creating the creator within inside ourselves, creating our internal power.
Robin.
The pain point is specific to each soul class, and it's I was thinking a good answer. It seems like it's the part of ourself that is connected to our ego or will to receive, and it holds us back. It every time it blocks our perception. It blasts pain every time you start to get away from your ego and will to receive, to be connected with the creator. So it's distorting our perception so that we shrink back from being connected to the creator, or the creator within us, or ourselves as a creator.
Because of the beginning, especially before the barrier, where we see a reality in front of us and it's very strong and very powerful, and we cling to it, the pain point is that single root cause that is causing us to want to stay where we are in our current perception of reality and not have a disconnect, and actually disconnect our perception from the reality, so then we can grow in our perception instead of staying where we are aligned to reality. So we can actually grow our perception to the degree that we need to, which is in spirituality, and actually reach it in the correction. And that pain point arises before and after the barriers. Is constantly this thing that wants to keep us, wants to make us plateau, to stay where we are, to sort of cling on, anchor ourselves to what we currently have instead of moving forward and actually advancing. But to advance, it requires to remove that stability of where you are and actually expand your thoughts and your ideas and your concepts and your mind to actually grow and mature accordingly. The second question, how can we empower ourselves with our class? Cedric.
I would believe that perhaps we get certain attributes with each class. And what I found when we were reading that is that there are some attributes that on one hand help us, but on the other one, there's something that we have to learn. So perhaps what we need to do in order to progress is to acquire as many as possible attributes from the other classes in order then to be a whole. And with that, perhaps strength, we can move forward to a better growth.
Gabriel.
I mean, it'll clean our path, meaning that we do have a goal, but then the path is more straight because now we're not focusing on discernments and corrections that are not for us, but we actually are able to focus all the strength and for what can help us, and be able to use our environment to the fullest. If I know what affects me and how it affects me, then I can use it for my advancement.
Laura.
Yeah, adding on to what Gabriel said, understanding, I guess, your strong points and your weak points, and learning how to use the tools, which is the environment, and everything within that environment are tools. So to use them to your advantage, in the proper usage.
Maria.
I think that it depends on our perception, because initially we're sensing it as pain because it is a weakness that I'm identifying. It's something that does not let me achieve internal power. But if I realize that with every pain point there is a corresponding strength, something really, really powerful that can come out of that, then I can use it as fuel instead of feeling that it's something that sets me back. I can learn to use it so that I can gain internal power with it.
Michael.
The way the classes have helped me to empower is through that environment that it supports us, this connection with the friends, and the lighted reforms that we get from the book that help us to grow and reveal our pain points.
Rick.
By knowing your class, you, as it was said earlier, you are able to focus in on what is your pain point. You need to find this pain point and then scrutinize everything using all the tools of your friends, of your readings, any way you can find to scrutinize this. Bring it out with others whenever you can and find out how it relates to them and see how it relates back to you through them, giving you an objective view. And in that process, unlocking that pain point, and at least in the potential at this stage, because we're before the barrier and it needs to, you can't finish it, the work until after we pass the barrier. But in the confidence that you've started to gain in preparation for doing that, you're able to move forward.
Robin.
Right. If you know your pain point, if you know your class, I mean, you've got tools. It's, you know where you have to work, you know where you have to look, you know where your awareness can be focused in on those, on that area where your perception, the things you perceive, trigger that, and as it's triggered, you can work on it, and so you can get internal power and move forward.
Andy wrote, wisdom from the text, strength from the friends. The first thing, of course, is to actually know your class. And once you know your class and you accept it and gone through that elimination of thinking that you're the other classes, then you have to start working with accepting your pain point, and accepting that it's going to be continually shown in front of your face, full view, all the time, and that the group and the individuals will actually be the ones that will be able to trigger it more than anybody else. But it gives you then great place for work, because then you can actually spend less time on searching for your pain point and spending more time on actually correcting it, accepting your pain point, understanding that your pain point, like Maria said, will turn into a strength in its corrected form, and actually use it as a way to push you forward. The third question, what is the reward for working with all the classes? Cedric.
Perhaps being able to identify what's missing and acquiring that will reward us in terms of having those extended attributes that can help us to be a whole, to be a one.
Gabriel.
Yeah, we complete each other. We're able to bring out what's what we cannot do by ourselves. Meaning that things trigger one another and complete one another. So by working with each other, with every other class, you become you're able to include all the attributes within you to be able to see everything within you. But you got a clear reflection of it.
Laura.
It would be strength, being able to work with all the attributes and qualities and work with them correctly to create more strength.
Maria.
Yes, I agree. I think that this would be actually what the true meaning of love of friends is, because we are gaining strength from each other. The strengths that I have, the others need, and the strengths that every single one of the others have is what I need. And it's as if it's we're tuning into the same power plant, and therefore we're part of this power plant, but we're taking advantage of it exponentially, if you will.
Michael.
The reward is, with this work with friends, we actually get their perceptions and we actually empower ourselves in our own personal work so that we can advance. And in this environment that it creates, it pushes us forward in our work.
Rick.
The mixing and the mingling of different qualities, of the different degrees of who and what we are, our qualities, is a strengthening for all of us. Instead of just being one quality, like myself, Yosef, by working with the other qualities, I can mingle that in with who I am, and thereby making me less stringent of a Yosef, and I have ability then to see things from their view as well as my own. It's like Maria was saying also, it's like bringing the friends within yourself and using their qualities.
Robin.
By knowing the other soul classes and their pain points, and it just creates an understanding in it, and it clears the air for or the way for the true intermingling, and like in the text, the true love between the different classes, and that whole system, that whole power of everything working together.
Andy writes, for me, it's just strength from all of us. Each class is looking at the system from a unique perspective, and even if we're all, if two people are on the same degree, their class will allow them to see that same degree a little differently from each other. So of course they've got a commonality and a common language that they can talk with each other and share those emotions, but still they'll have a unique perspective that by sharing with each other, they can actually expand the view and perception of both of them together. So it's like the group becomes a melting pot of discernments, observations, and awareness that can really give a more complete picture than if I'm just looking at reality from my own class. So on one hand, a natural thing of a person would be to align with the people in his own class. All birds, stick together from the same flock sort of thing. And the idea is that by actually being with the opposite class, then you, and of course with all the classes in between that range, you get this much wider angle of view and contrast. And we always say that we learn black by looking at white. So the same thing, if you want to learn your own class, sometimes you have to see the negative of it, you have to see the opposite of it. And then it can give you a much more concrete and it can clarify much more about yourself. So, what do you think of the article?
I read through this before on my own, but it's always such better when we can sit down together and look at these different things, because even though you read through it, it seems like you can only retain so much percentage of it. You have to do it over and over again, but it's always much better when you can do it and get perspective from others. So I think the article is very good.
Yes, I also want to point out one word, because like Rick says, when you read it, it has you can get a little bit more meaning, and the word, when you remember what take lead among the others.
I found that interesting that on one hand there's something that we try to hold on, thinking that it could keep us safe and that we're doing good, but at the end it's just like a comfort zone. So it's hard to move on from one place to another, but the thing that challenges is what makes us grow. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind.
My view on the article, it basically helps ourselves to see the perfect point and the attribute we are here to correct. And if we can have a clear vision of the class of the soul we pertain to, we can work better with the group to get power to manifest the best part of it and grow.
I know that normally when we learn Kabbalah in a society, we learn it in a very general manner. Like it's talking to everyone equally. Sometimes there's some differences that is put between men and women, mostly for physical issues. But at the end of the day, it's normally talked in a very general perspective, and people can understand what they want and understand what they want. And there really is nowhere to actually say, okay, did I understand it correctly or not? And what we do in System Concepts, we actually are trying more and more to actually put the details in the process and actually give phases and degrees and names to the advancement. How do you actually cross the barrier? What are the actual degrees you go through? How can you know if you're stuck in a shell? How can you know if you're plateauing, if you're advancing faster or slower? How do you know what point you're meant to focus on? If for example, someone's an Avram, their pain point is the environment, and that's what's going to flare up all the time. they're not going to have the problem of Yaakov, which is, more of a responsibility issue. So there would be no point in Avram spending time on the responsibility issue when it's not their pain point. Their pain point is the environment. And it would be a waste of time for Yaakov, which is their pain point is responsibility, to start dealing all the time with the pain point of Avram, which is the supporting environment. So the idea is to really get people focused so that they can advance as fast as possible without having to spend time trying to search for what they're meant to do next. The downside of this is that what I've noticed is that many people feel like it limits them. They feel like you can't define what I am. They think that spirituality is all about reaching, everything, love of everything. Everything's going to be great. The problem is, yes, that is the goal, but the way you reach it is by actually increasing the amount of details and understandings and distances, and this person is this and this person is that. And what that does, it builds a picture in you, right? If you want to enjoy a picture, which is a great feeling, you need details in that picture. And the more actually details you have, you can actually enjoy more of the picture. And on the other hand, though, too much details can overload you. But if you don't have enough details, then you can't see anything. It's like, that's beauty. Beauty is the middle point, the combination of abstraction and details. If you see too many details, you don't see the person's face. And if you see too little details, you just see a blurred face. And the idea for us in Kabbalah is to really find that middle line of learning about all these phases, classes, degrees, tiers, and so forth, but not let them, not feel like they're limiting our growth. In fact, they're enhancing our growth, and we should use them as tools, just like anything else. A fork is a fork, a knife is a knife. It's okay to know the difference between them, but by using the combination between them, we can actually eat a meal.
But can I add to that? You can use a fork as a knife. You can cut with a fork. And there is art that is very modern that actually lacks many details. It's left open to your own imagination. It's extremely abstract. And that's considered also beautiful to some.
What makes it beautiful is how you perceive it. So it would be like the creator is the abstract light, and then you with your own concealment, you make shadows of it and discern details on it.
I'd say what we're trying to do is actually, if we're trying to get somewhere, we need a combination of, on one hand, we need the abstractions, like I'm trying to reach a certain city, right? But the city is an abstract concept, right? It's an area. But on the other hand, I need the details of the street and where specifically I'm trying to go so I can actually reach the location. But on the other hand, I don't want too many details. I don't want to be told the GPS coordinate or, told about the specs on the atoms where I need to go to. So you really want to find a good balance between them. But I do agree with you that there are, different kinds of art that play on those, play between those extremes as well.
But it seems what we do in system concepts is that we fine-tune the best tool for progression. So it's right that a variety of ways can be used in different ways, but the more that we scrutinize, the more that we work together and define the best way to do what we're doing, we end up really developing the best tool.
I'll tell you myself, and I've always worked at this since I've started and learned about it, is to always try to build my center line, prepare myself to build my center line from my left and right. And in this article, it's telling me the same thing, is that I have to find all these soul classes, work with them, and bring their attributes into my soul class so that I can take and allow myself to, you might say, blossom, and use those attributes as a way of empowering myself beyond just being my soul class.
I totally agree. And it's like when you know what qualities you have and what you don't have, then it's so much easier for you to know to search what you do need to have. So it's like this combination of you want to know what you lack so you can actually go find what you need. It's like you need to know that you have no milk in the house to actually go and buy milk at the supermarket. So it's by one of the things that I really love what we've done so far is we really have a good balance of the classes. And we have very strong people in each class that really give a good representation of their class and really give great discernments that really like allow this article to be written in the first place.
The other thought that comes to mind is hastening time, because rather than it being a limiting factor, it helps to know what kind of tools you have. Like we all want to build a house together, but don't look at yourself. Just look outside, and that kind of limits. Well, what are my strengths? What do I have that the others? What is it that I have as my contribution to what it means to achieve the goal. And then I know, well, if I have a skill saw and wood, then I know what type of, that I'm doing the framing. If I have the wheelbarrow, then I'm doing the foundation. I mean, there's so many things, but once I identify what I have, it's not a limiting factor, but it hastens time so that I can start concentrating on what needs work with respect to my role in the big picture.
I agree, because like if you're working on something that is not a deficiency within your soul class, you're wasting time. You are chasing butterflies in the field, you might say. When you take and know where you're at and the direction you're going, it is a way of aiming yourself with your intention to drive you forward, creating your internal power and finding your future self.
I think it was good that we, over the last few weeks, that we went over this article while it was being written and really got to express all the different understandings and views, because this is a very personal article. And it does require someone to actually sit down like with a friend and actually figure out how it applies to them. It's not an article of knowledge. It's not just about, oh, I come out and say, oh, I know all the classes. I know more knowledge now. It's more of an article about advancement. What do you need? How does this apply to you? Which class are you? Do you feel that pain point? Maybe you don't feel that pain point. And just really awaken that internal conversation.
What does it mean to be independent in your perception of others?
What do you mean?
I think what you wrote for the correction of Abraham, that says that correction of Abraham is to be independent of the environment in their perception while still interacting with them physically.
So the pain point of Avram was that they attract unsupportive situations that make them feel unworthy to advance. So they tie themselves too much to corporeal support. And they feel that if they don't have corporeal support, they won't advance spiritually. That is, they lack that dynamic ability to sort of advance no matter what environment is given to them. So you still need an environment, right? The question is, do you have that dynamic ability to change yourself accordingly when your environment changes? When people flare up, for example, do you have that ability to look at it from a different perspective and take it differently? And Avrams tend to take it very raw. They take it as it is. They lack that that quality that they need to get, which is that quality of water, to actually able to move and have, rise and fall by all the different pulling forces around them. So the corrected state of Avram is to be independent in the environment, but still interacting with them. Because by being independent and not tying themselves, then they can actually use their environment instead of constantly being swayed left and right by their environment. And the thing is that they actually want, the thing is that even when someone's uncorrected, they want that state. So Avram in its uncorrected form wants the situation where the environment sways them from left to right. They are not used to, they're scared of actually getting their independence and having the ability to stand separate from the situation while still interacting with them, and then able to use them accordingly. You can see the contrast, for example, between Avram and Yosef. So Yosef, for example, which is the total opposite, right? Their problem is that they actually have that separation. They're in themselves, and they're not dependent on their environment, and they have a tendency to separate themselves from their environment because they've got just that strength, right? So Yosef's strength, they have that strength in themselves. The problem is that because they separate themselves from their environment, they're basically empty. They're like a bag with no groceries, right? Because they're very strong bag. Like, look at my bag. It's very strong. It's very good. It's sturdy, but it's got nothing in it. Where are you going to get to fill it from? You're going to get to fill it from your environment, from the qualities that you're going to see in reality. You're going to see all these different perceptions, ideas, concepts, and you're going to bring them into you. You're not going to say, oh, I always knew that. You're going to say, oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to get this new thing from the environment and actually fill my bag instead of constantly trying to say to everybody, no, my bag is full. You're just thinking it's empty. I'm not empty. My bag is full. It is to understand that your bag is full, is empty, so you can actually fill it. And that is the corrected state of Yosef when they come to acceptance that they're empty, that they have no quality. Then they can fill themselves with all the qualities instead of needing validation of their current empty state. So you can see that that opposition between the two. Avram is too connected to the environment. They need more of that separation so they can use the environment. And Yosef are separated from the environment. They need to actually start interacting with it and actually use it accordingly.
And to be able to actually correct this, it's just a process of gathering discernments, which is going through the motions and eventually realizing it. I mean, there's not much. What else is there to do?
The whole path is collecting discernments. That's what we do. The discernments create those emotional vessels within us that have intellect inside those emotions. So they're not just raw emotions; they're emotions which are structured with intellect. And that is.
And this is what the light that reform does pretty much. Once you collect discernments, that's what starts changing you.
Exactly. Your half shekel, your work is to collect the discernments, and then the light can reform you by the discernments that you want to actually merge together and become a vessel. So the actual glue, you could say, is done by the light that reforms, but you have to actually collect the discernments for it to glue something together. If you just have glue and you have no discernments, what are you going to put together? And if you have just discernments and no glue, which is no goal, right? The glue is the goal. If you have no goal, then what's the point of having the discernments in the first place? So you need the combination between the discernments, which is the left line, and the goal, the glue, which is the right line, that unity, that light, the reforms that's going to put them together and then make you that middle line, that center. So you can see how, if let's say someone was an Avram and they were thinking they're Yosef, they'd be doing the total opposite work what they need to do. Right? The Avram is connected to the environment. That's not what they have to work on. Their work is to actually have that internal separation. So still externally be in all the situations, but have that internal disconnect, internal separation. But if someone was a Yosef and they thought that they were an Avram, right? So they would be trying to cause that separation from the environment, be that independence. That's what they have anyway. The problem is that they need to actually have that dependence, that connection. One of the things that I'm very happy of with this article was that it is definitely a result of the experience that I got with the group of system concepts by really monitoring and analyzing and discerning with the friends themselves. These discernments, that's how we really got to a quite good first draft of the classes and what is the pain point and what is their corrected form and so forth.
I believe it's a big challenge to try to identify oneself within a class, and if I can do that, well, then the other next big challenge is to try to understand that there are other classes and that I might not be drawn to them, or that I may not like them, or that something that will keep me off from getting together and keep on growing. And that, I think that's also a huge challenge. And perhaps with the work that we have been doing here, it's a way to identify that we have some sort of ego that keep us away, and if we can do that, then we'll take the next step, which is trying to get together with other classes.
I definitely agree with you that it really scares us sometimes to deal with these more personal labels and identification. It scares us because we'll find out that it's true. One of the things I've noticed is that people have no problem being any class than their own class. So you'll find that people want to be any class but their own, because it comes to that acceptance of self, of understanding where's your starting point, so then you can actually reach somewhere and make something of yourself.
Do you think that's where the pain comes from? Like you were describing Abraham and Joseph, and that I've always been I've always been writing with the right. Now you want me to write with my left, and hence that's actually what we were needing to feel that sense of control. But it's something that takes us out of our comfort zone, maybe.
Yes, it definitely takes us out of our comfort control. It's like the goal is to love yourself. The problem is that in order to reach the goal of loving yourself, you have to first accept that you don't love yourself. And that acceptance is very hard for us to do for a few reasons. One, when we look back and we're like, what? I did this all to myself. If there's none else besides the internal power within me, that means that I subconsciously made everything that I see in my reality happen. Then what? I did this to myself. I stopped myself from getting that job that I wanted. I had this problem with these family members. I did this, I did that. It's very hard for us to, first of all, accept that realization. That's a lot of pain. And Bhadasana says in one precept that that pain can cause us to go into denial and not want to actually accept this. It's just too much for us, and then we just block it. We forget about it, or we fight against it, or we fight against the person who talked about it. It's so hard for us to accept that we were basically fighting ourselves our entire lives. And the goal is to reach a point where we won't fight with ourselves, or our desires will be very clear for us. And we'll know that even if we're getting negative thoughts, we'll know how to actually use them, and we're not going to be worried about them, and we're not going to start thinking of positive or negative thoughts, and our negative thoughts or positive thoughts, and so forth. Yes, Mark?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late, but
good afternoon.
My question is, if I understand the topic that we're talking about here, why did I do this to myself? Why did I cause all this pain? Was it simply to get my attention? Am I trying to realize, wake myself up? But why did I do all of these things to myself that seem so negative now?
So one of the issues is that we need contrast, right? When we're going to find all the great situations that we're going to go through. Bhadasana actually gives this example of this person who got beaten up, and then the landlord came home and asked him how many times was he beaten, and he said 10, and then he got like loads of money for each time he was beaten up. And then he was like, came back to his wife and he was crying. He's like, why are you crying? He's like, oh, I wish he would have beaten me up like so many more times. I would have been someone so much more rich. So the idea is that for every situation that we've gone through that we've basically been shooting ourselves in the foot, when we do reach that correction, we'll have that contrast and we're really able to understand the differences and we're able to help others as well. Like one of the things is, you don't want to be like, oh, I was perfect from birth and everything was great. And then I reached attainment and everything was wonderful. How are you going to help anybody else? How are you going to help them identify how they're basically shooting themselves in the foot currently in order to allow them to know how to shoot straight instead of shooting down if you haven't gone through it? That's one of the nice things about this path is if you actually go through each of the phases, that's how you can actually help somebody else go through the phase. Because I've gone through a phase, I can know, oh, this is what you feel in this phase. It could be a terrible feeling. It could be a descent. It could be very hard. But then I can tell somebody else about it and then allow them not to go through the same experience, right? It's like, we go to our children, we say, it's terrible, don't touch the fire, right? Someone must have touched the fire at some point to realize that fire can burn you. So the idea that we do all these situations is because we really want that contrast. And another thing is that sometimes we do things and we don't actually understand how they're actually good for us. We might miss a flight and at the beginning think it's bad, but find out in the end that it's perfect.
I don't understand exactly how that process of correction is made.
Well, first we have to understand what are we correcting. We're correcting our perception. Our reality is fine. Reality is perfect. The situations we actually go through are predetermined and they're perfect. The problem is that our perception of them is very immature. Like children, we're living in a body of an adult, but our perception is of a baby. And that's why we don't understand how our desires actually work. They just reach maturity of our perception and understanding of who we are and how we actually act in order to use ourselves in a better way, right? It's like trying to use a smartphone and not knowing how a smartphone works and not understanding why did you break the phone. It's like, oh, I don't understand. I pressed here. It said format everything and I pressed yes. I don't understand why the phone is empty. Where's all my contacts? It's like, well, if you knew how it worked, then you know how to use it correctly. So the idea is that the problem is not the ego. The problem is that we don't know how to use the ego. And in order to use the ego, we need to know how to first reach that separation, actually get the quality of bestowal of the Creator, to have that separation from our ego. And then we can actually reactivate our ego and know how to use it correctly. And that's the whole process. And we reach that process by collecting discernments of first of all, understanding which phase we're in, then understanding what our next phase is, and then using the environment, the group, the individual, the society, and humanity to push us towards that future state, that future phase. One of the mistakes is that we think that we've actually, in our perception, gone through all the phases, that we actually, have reached the breaking of the vessels. Then we've actually, Adam Rishon broke into all the pieces and stuff, and we think we've actually gone through it. But the idea is that reality has gone through it. That's why we can see all the different details in reality. That separation in reality, in our five senses. But in our perception, we don't have those details. We don't actually have an understanding of the differences. And we actually need to reach those details, that means that we're actually starting from Ein Sof in our perception. We're actually starting from a state of oneness, of everything is the same. And we don't have that contrast, that details to actually have that separation in order to actually use it. It's like we think we're a knife and then we can't use the knife. You first have to know that you're not the knife to enable to use the knife. And that's why we actually go from Ein Sof, from boundless light, to this world, to align our coarseness of our perception to the coarseness of reality. We think we're coarse, but we're not very coarse at all. We're actually in full purity. We're very naive. We don't actually have a real understanding of the world we're living in. And the idea is to actually reach that coarseness, reach those details, that separation and understanding with that intention, which is basically that scream, that unification, to understand this is all what I've got to work with and understand the details in what I'm working with. And that's the combination of the creator, which is the abstraction, and the ego, which is the details. All right, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.